Naresh Bhatt was denied bond for a second time today, and we learned a lot. Let's talk about it. Just at home, I'm eating dinner, and I'm going to go through all of my notes on this, and this is the order in which it happened. I'll do more videos tomorrow to kind of drill down on some of these topics, but today was wild. The hearing was almost 3 hours long. The courtroom was so packed that they had to turn people away. Thankfully, I got a seat. The defense started at the bond hearing, and their big argument was the arrest warrant and the fact that the defense is contending that Detective Ventura perjured herself when she said that there was evidence that the body was dragged out of the house. She did admit that there was not evidence that it was dragged out of the house, just that it was dragged from room to room. So Mr. Ben Alverham was trying to get the entire thing basically thrown out based on that. He said again that the lead detective went to the magistrate with a typed up probable cause affidavit, and the magistrate basically said, I need more. You got to add something about how the body got out of the house. So that's why she hand wrote that portion in. And again, I just did a video yesterday about this, but this is what I'm referring to. On August 26th, she admits that there was no evidence. He claims that she lied to the magistrate. And the captain wrote a letter basically stating this on September 4th, but it was not turned over until after the hearing, about 10 to 15 minutes after the hearing on September 16th. The magistrate was not going to issue the arrest warrant until the lie was put in, according to Naresh's lawyer. Then he went and talked about the welfare check on August 2nd, said that the interaction was about 15 minutes long. And during this, police asked Naresh where his wife was, and he said New York or Texas. He then talked about selling house and separating, and then they did not talk about filing a missing persons report at all during that welfare check. Naresh said that Mamta left without communications. He called 911 on the night of 8/4, and then the missing persons report was officially filed on August 5th. And he brings up the Mamta's phone pinging and cleaning supplies and inconsistent statements, and he basically saying that the prosecution was making more of that than it was. Naresh said that Mamta left on Tuesday or Wednesday. She had her phone and then destroyed her phone. Then Ben Alverham was trying to say that that was like a translation issue and that Mamta did have many phones at one point, but he was trying to kind of downplay that. He then brought up the February police incident when the police were called to the house. He said that there was no arrest and that basically the police got there. Mamta did not accuse Naresh of abusing her and said that she had just asked for her documents, like her passport, green card, things like that. Naresh gave it to her. The police left. Because the Virginia Code requires arrest if any physical touching were to have occurred, but there is none according to the interviews. He then addressed the knives that Naresh bought, and he said, listen, those are just knives. You know, they're cheap Walmart knives. They're $10 to $15, and anybody could buy those. They don't mean anything. And then he brought up cadaver dogs at the house. And he's like, listen, you know, if they had brought cadaver dogs and the cadaver dogs had found anything, we would know about it. He then said that they were already talking about selling the house before Mamta went missing, so you can't use that as proof that he's a flight risk. He also brought up the Tesla data and said if they had any indication that the Tesla was parked somewhere suspicious, that they would have said that by now. And so there's nothing incriminating in the Tesla data. He then offered Naresh's passport, GPS, as, you know, just a way to get him on bond. Then he talked about Blue Star, and he said he was trying to, you know, take down the importance of that as well. Blue Star technology can locate blood that's diluted to 100,000 parts, meaning that if you have a gallon of water and you put 1 drop of blood in it and then use Blue Star, it'll appear as though the entire bucket is filled with blood when it's really just a drop that's diluted in a gallon of water. So he was saying that the pictures make it look like there's a lot of blood, but it's really not that much blood. But then he brought up cleaning, made it look like it was more blood than it was. Then he talked about you can't accuse somebody of concealing a body when you haven't produced the body or body parts. parts. The judge did push back on this and says that you don't need body parts. And then she brought up another case in which a conviction was upheld for homicide and concealing a dead body in which they did not have a body or body parts. We actually had a recess so she could find that case, but then she couldn't find it. So that was a whole thing. But Ben Alverham brought up the fact that the Commonwealth's attorney, Ms. Ashworth, said on August 22nd that they didn't know if Momta was dead or alive. And he said, how can you keep my client in jail for concealing a dead body when the Commonwealth's attorney went out and said, you don't even know if she's dead? He said then, quote, they don't have enough. What got him arrested was a false statement by a police officer in a criminal complaint, end quote. The judge pushed back and said the only issue is not did the magistrate make a mistake, it's is he a flight risk or danger today. She said the weight of the evidence is important and whether the magistrate has issued a warrant, quote, is a ship that has sailed and should have been addressed at a preliminary or a grand jury, but the defense waived both. Mr. Ben Alverham then said that the prosecution knew that the statement was false on September 4th, but did not present it. And he asked if anything else has been developed between August 22nd and today that would overcome what the magistrate did. The judge disagreed with his assessment. Then Ben Alverham said he could go back to the house if he was released on bond, but he probably wouldn't. And that he served in the Army for 7 years honorably. He had security clearances. He's a U.S. citizen with no previous charges. So that is what the defense had to say. I'm already almost at my 10-minute limit here, so I'm going to have to make a part 2 on this, all right? And that's where we're going to get into what the prosecution said and the horrifying things that we learned. Here's part 2 of the bond hearing update. This is what the prosecution had to say. The judge said that the main issue that we were dealing with today was the sufficiency of the evidence. The prosecution started off by showing us the entire 14-minute video of the body cam footage from the August 2nd welfare check. And here is what really struck me about it. A couple things. Okay, so number one, right off the bat, the first people that the two officers encounter were the tenants who are renting the basement. Now remember, this is a family from Colombia and they do not speak English, they only speak Spanish. So they were not able to really communicate much with Naresh and Momta. So the police officer who spoke Spanish said, hey, do you know, is Momta Kafle home? And they were like, yeah, we don't know who that is. So they didn't even know her name. And then they figured out who they were talking about. They're like, no, we haven't seen her. And then they end up going to knock on the door to talk to Naresh. So this is what really struck me, is that the sequence of events was like, knock, knock, knock. Hi, we're looking for Momta Kafle. And then Naresh, word vomit, all right? He is just like talking like a mile a minute, and says that Momta left on Tuesday or Wednesday, which would have been the July 30th or 31st, to go to either Texas or New York. She had her phone, but then she destroyed the phone. She went to go visit her sister. She had 3 phones, he says at one point. The officer asks why she left. He said that we were separating and we're looking to sell the house, and so I have inspectors coming to the home. She didn't want to be here for that. Then he went on and said she used to live in Falls Church. Maybe she's somewhere in Manassas. She's just started a job on July 8th. And that basically she left the baby, and I guess was looking for another place to live. And that once things settled down, she would come back for the baby. He said that he had spoken to both her sister and her mother. He also said that this was not the first time she's left. He also said he does not have the sister's phone number, that they usually talk on Facebook. Then he said, she said she didn't want to live with my parents. She's run away multiple times. So that's why I haven't been worried about it, because she does this all the time, basically. She already took a bunch of her stuff. So that's what's going on. So then the cops asked him for his ID. So he goes inside, and then the cops are talking to each other. Cop number 1 said, hey, we don't have contact, meaning contact with Momta, But he said, get his info and tell him to give us a call if she comes home. Cop number 2 says, okay, yeah, we'll call the job and say that we spoke to the husband and they're going through a divorce and she left. So they totally bought his story right off the bat. They kind of blew off the entire welfare check and was like, oh yeah, this is just, a couple that's getting a divorce and that's why she hasn't shown up to work. So Naresh comes back, he asks for the police officer's card so he can get back in touch with them. Then he just starts jabbering, and I really couldn't catch it because he was talking so fast. But he said something about Uber and previous times that she had left, and that she was supposed to return home by Sunday, if not Saturday night. But if she doesn't come home, he has to hire somebody to take care of the baby. The cop number 1 tells him to contact people she knows to try to find her. And then Naresh says, oh, also she has mental issues. That's the term he used, mental issues. It says that she disappeared for a week in March. Then he said, hopefully she'll be back by Sunday. Oh, and then he's like, well, maybe she also applied for a new job. And so maybe she's trying to move somewhere else, so she just applied for a new job somewhere else too. So anyway, so that was the welfare check, 14 minutes. Then on August 4th, they submitted the text between Naresh and the police into evidence. At 9:09 on August 4th, he texted the police officer, Mamta Kavle is not back and I haven't had contact with her. 9:22, the officer responds, thank you for the update. If you believe she's gone missing, please call 911. 9:28, Naresh says thank you. 911 was called at some point after that, and then the report was filed the next day. Then Sweet tries to defend Detective Ventura and what he calls an error in her statement. He says that it was a, quote, reasonable inference, and he doesn't think it's a, quote, fatal flaw. And again, it could have been addressed at the grand jury prelim, but we didn't have those. And he said that, yeah, Mamta has gone missing before, but she didn't run away. She was fleeing from an abusive situation and she took the baby. And then he said, quote, and this, I'm going to try to get through this because I had a hard time getting through this during the live. She didn't voluntarily leave this man. She was disposed of by this man. End quote. Then Sarah Sammy came and laid out the evidence, and this is what we learned, and this was really difficult. She said that Mamta does not have a bio sister in the U.S., and that this sister is actually just a close friend, and that he's given vastly different stories about when he's last seen her, and you see my whole other video about what he said during the welfare check versus what he told the reporter. And then she gets into the timeline. And this timeline is coming from 25 different search warrants. July 27th, 8:17 p.m. Mamta Kavle is picked up outside of the hospital. July 28th, Naresh is in Baltimore for a good portion of the day. Mamta was home. At 6:03 p.m., she sent a Facebook message thanking somebody on Facebook Marketplace from whom she bought some jewelry. At 8:25 and 8:58, Mamta attempted to contact Naresh. She was at home. On July 29th, Naresh returned home at 12:29 a.m. Phone records show both of them were home for the majority of the day on July 29th. At 8:30 p.m., Mamta spoke with her mom via Facebook video call. That was a 14-minute call, and it was the last time Mamta spoke with her mother. Mamta was in constant communication with her parents 2 times a day, and up until that day. On July 30th at 5:40 a.m., Naresh sent a text to their babysitter, Amanda, and asked to drop the baby off after 8 a.m. He ended up dropping the baby off after 6:30 a.m. At 6:44 a.m., he's seen on video discarding bags in the dumpster at her apartment complex. Between July 30th and July 31st, Naresh is seen discarding many different bags at many different dump sites. At 6:53 a.m. on the 30th, he returns home. At 8:12 a.m., there's a video of him at Home Depot buying 2 pairs of rubberized gloves. At 8:41 a.m., he's seen buying a 3-pack of knives at Walmart. The 2 large knives have not been recovered. At 11:09 a.m. is the first missed call from Mamta's mom. At 3:45 p.m., Naresh picked up the baby from the babysitter and parked his Tesla by the same dumpster very far away from the apartment. At 5:22 p.m., Naresh went to Lidl and bought a 40-pack of black contractor bags. On July 31st at 1:30 a.m., video in Falls Church shows him with white gloves retrieving trash bags from the trunk and discarding them into a trash compactor. Now, this is near a property that he is renting out currently, but he had not seen the tenants at any point around this time. Sarah Sammy says that one of the bags was pretty significant and he had to hold one and support the bottom of it as if there was liquid inside. He did not have his phone at this time. At 8 a.m. on 7/31, Naresh dropped the baby off again at the babysitter's house. The babysitter said that Naresh was nervous both times. Video shows him driving by the same dumpster slowly and looking back at the dumpster. At 1:10 p.m., Tesla is seen on a license plate reader in Fairfax County. It's seen again at 1:28 and 1:47. All right, I'm running out of time. We're going to have to do a part 3. We're continuing with part 3 of the September 20th bond hearing for Naresh Bhatt. At 2 p.m. on July 31st, he was seen on CCTV at Walmart buying cleaning supplies. At 5:30 p.m., he is back at the apartment complex where the babysitter lives. He is on video at the dumpster, placing 2 trash bags inside while wearing white gloves. He does not pick the baby up at this time. He instead leaves and comes back an hour and a half later to pick up the baby, so around 7 p.m. They also looked into the water usage at Naresh's house on July 31st. Between 11 a.m. and noon that day, 150 gallons of water was consumed. For the rest of the day, in any given hour, there was about 3 to 4 gallons of water consumed. So this was a gigantic leap that only lasted that 1 hour. Then Sarah Sammy went on to the Blue Star technology. She said that Naresh had moved the bed against the wall closest to the door, and that there was a 1 foot wide streak that went through the master bedroom, and that there was oval pooling that was darker in some parts. Presumptive test showed blood. And this is where we learned when she said that, this is going to be backwards, they don't have DNA. The DNA has not come back yet in Naresh's case. Then she went over some of the other Blue Star technology, a lot of which we did know from the original bond hearing, that there was blood spatter on the right-hand sidewall close to the drag marks. The shower illuminated, and on the floor in the bathroom, there was an outline of something, and then blood surrounding it, and that thing that was there on the floor had been moved. 2 windows, 1 shade was missing. The shade was found in the closet with blood spatter on the panels that was visible with the naked eye. And here is a big deal, and I made a big deal about this in the live too. They brought a cadaver dog in. They brought a cadaver dog in that is trained to only alert on dead bodies, not dead animals, not blood, decomposing bodies. And that cadaver dog alerted on Naresh and Mamta's bedroom. On July 30th at 4:13 a.m., Naresh used his phone to Google diagram of brain. Then at 4:30 a.m., he used his phone to Google chicken farm near me. August 1st, Naresh turned his phone off, but Mamta's phone pinged in Loudoun County. Naresh provided receipts showing he was at a cafe in the area. He was at a Liberty gas station in Loudoun County. CCTV shows Naresh walking with a limp and went into a cafe. He ate and walked back out to his car. He grabbed bags and walked over to a donation bin within the complex. He used a napkin or paper to hold the bags and then threw them in the donation bag. Law enforcement has recovered those bags, and one of them had a white bath mat with pinkish brown stains on it. presumptive tests show that it is positive for blood. There were blood on the bags themselves as well. The tenants told police that after the welfare check on the 2nd, Naresh asked them to help him move the bed across the room. After August 1st, there was no more activity from Mamta's phone. She missed her USCIS appointment for citizenship. Then she went and talked about the February incident and the allegations of domestic violence. They are in possession of a photo of Mamta with a bloody face and a swollen eye. Mamta sent this photo to her brother. She told him to hold on to it in case he needed it later. It's later. Naresh also Googled uncontested divorce time and uncontested divorce joint bank account. He also Googled what happens if spouse disappears with divorce. And then she went over those April searches, and the one that I couldn't hear in the first hearing was what happened debt of died spouse. Now, I did not hear debt in that original bond hearing, so other people had said that, but yes, it was what happened debt of died spouse. But then we learned about another search from April. Quote, Happy New Year message to girlfriend. Nepali New Year is in April. On August 16th, Naresh told police he wanted to send the baby back to Nepal. And when he sold the Tesla on August 19th, that was the day after Manassas Park Police asked for his consent to search it. He, at some point, disabled the timing advance, which is location data. There was evidence of Naresh frequenting many dump sites and covering his tracks. All of his actions indicate that he's the flight risk, according to the prosecution. Then she talked about his history of domestic violence. There was a witness who saw, and this is the friend who gave the interview yesterday, she saw Naresh slap Mamta in the face after Mamta poured rice on his head. Mamta confided in coworkers and friends and posted in Facebook groups. Quote, We believe we have enough to sustain the charge before the court today, end quote. The defense rebutted and said that, Naresh told police that they were selling the house and divorcing, so that's not a big deal. And that there's no evidence except for the bath mat, and nothing was found at the dump sites. People have big trash bags. It's not convenient for trash collection. If you've got a lot of contractor bags, a lot of times trash collection won't pick it up if it's not in a bin. So it makes sense that he went to these other places and used dumpsters, like at the babysitter's place or, where he owns this other property. He says that doesn't prove anything. At no point, he says, did Miss Sammy say they met the requirements for this charge of concealing a dead body. Blue Star does not tell if all the blood is from the same time. And this 1 foot wide drag mark is not the size of a human body. He said they have evidence of stuff, but not evidence of death or body parts. Then he brought up this whole thing with why he thinks that they didn't charge him with murder. And he says it was to get him in jail and then bring in jailhouse snitches to get him to basically confess. He says that this whole thing today creates a lot of questions, but it does not meet the statute. The judge disagreed with the statutory interpretation that he was making and said that the evidence was, quote, overwhelming. She said regarding the dead body, the cadaver dog alerting supports that there is a dead body. She said that, you said that he served in the Army and gave me his history, but you haven't said that he has family ties, employment, or connections to the area. There is probable cause to believe he's the flight risk, and that he is a danger to the community based on the disposal and the internet searches, and she did not grant him bond. So I'm sorry that was so long. That was 17 pages of notes. Like I said, we'll drill down more on this tomorrow, but that is what happened in court today.